Welcome back to another week of Guided by Faith, and this is a super special week as we are in Easter week. So as we walk towards Easter, I want to take a break. We've been in a break from Romans for a couple of weeks, and we're going to continue that one more week because I want to focus on the importance of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because essentially, if Jesus truly did not die and rise again, then our entire faith is a sham. And so this week, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through what we'll call the 5 E's, 5 evidences for Easter. A lot of this stuff was taken from a Lee Strobel book, which was really good. The Case, I think this is the Case for the Resurrection. I lose track. Lee Strobel's written a lot of books, but you can look it up. These are all common. None of these are ones that I came up with, but each one of them is very important to our faith, very encouraging, and will help give you confidence in your walk with Jesus as you think about what God did for you, what he went through, and how you can be confident that it's true, not just some kind of encouraging myth. So let's talk about this week. What we're going to look at is the execution of Jesus, the empty tomb, the eyewitnesses to his resurrection, the evangelistic fervor of the early church, and the extraordinary transformation that we see in the lives of people that believe that Jesus rose from the dead. So let's jump right into the first one, and that's the execution of Jesus. The resurrection only matters if Jesus actually died. Now, part of that is that Jesus must actually be a true historical figure, an actual person, not some kind of invented myth. And at this point, to be honest, basically all credible scholars would agree that Jesus was a real person. There was a period of time in the last century or so where you had last couple of centuries, where you would have scholars that would say that all of Jesus is a myth. It was just like an allegory, an inspirational figure made up. But at this point, basically even if they don't believe that Jesus is God, it is just solid belief that Jesus was a historical figure. And that's important because for Jesus to rise from the dead, he had to actually be a human being alive who died. So how can we be sure that he actually died? This is important too, because for instance, Islam will say that Jesus didn't die, that God actually switched out the body of Jesus and Judas on the cross, and that Jesus wasn't actually executed. But the Bible tells us clearly that it was. And when we say the Bible, remember, we're talking about not just the Bible, but individual gospel accounts. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. These are all individual accounts of the execution of Jesus when we get to the end. So what are we looking at today? The execution of Jesus. Mark 15:37 says, "And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last breath." Crucifixion was designed for death. You may not know, but Jesus was not the first person to be crucified. Crucifixion was invented by the Romans, perfected by them. There might have been a few other kingdoms before that used crucifixion, but Rome used it in a maximum way. As a matter of fact, as Jesus was a young man and child going from town to town, it's very possible that Jesus, in going from town to town, would have walked between villages or cities where there would be lines of people on crosses, dead, gross as it sounds, being picked apart by birds as they hung there. The Romans perfected crucifixion. It was a torturous death. It was 100% guaranteed to kill you, and it was designed to instill a sense of their power and then fear in those that they were dominating. Victims did not survive crucifixion. And the Bible clearly accounts this method of death for Jesus. Public execution was witnessed by crowds. Jesus didn't get crucified in a private corner. It was witnessed by his friends and his enemies and the Roman soldiers. The Roman soldiers confirmed that Jesus was dead. Remember, I think it's the Gospel of Luke that talks about how they put a spear into his side and blood and water came out, which is indicating that basically his heart burst, and that water sac that had grown around his heart ruptured when it was pierced. But at that point, the Bible records that he was already dead. That spearing was just a confirmation. Pilate verified in Matthew 15:44 and 45. Pilate verifies that Jesus was actually crucified. And so the Roman soldiers who did it knew that he was dead. The Jewish leaders around confirmed that he was dead. There was nobody that thought that Jesus didn't die. There's also external historical evidence beyond the Bible for the crucifixion of Jesus. There's a Roman historian named Tacitus who was around AD 116, and he records that Christus was executed under Pontius Pilate. He doesn't believe in Jesus, certainly didn't think he was God, but Christus, that's, the Latin name for Christ, that he recorded that he was crucified executed under Pontius Pilate. And then there's a Jewish historian from the first century named Josephus, also not a believer, and he mentioned Jesus being condemned to crucifixion. Now, these are not Christian writers trying to promote faith. These were just historians confirming the fact that Jesus was executed. There's no credible alternative. This idea that Jesus just swooned on the cross and then he got so strong afterwards that the disciples believed he rose from the dead has no basis in reality. A half-dead man does not roll away a stone, escape guards, and inspire worship. So the key takeaway from today, Jesus truly was killed. And this is important because the Bible says it's important unto man once to die. Bible tells us that the wages of our sin is death. And so we know that Jesus was sinless. And so if he died, he was paying a wage, not for himself, but for me and you. And so as we walk through this Easter week, and as we're in the beginning of it, I want you to just meditate and think about the reality that the God of all creation, the author of life, was killed voluntarily for me and you, for my sin and your sin. And that should lead us to worship. That should lead us to gratitude. Jesus was truly killed. But the reason that we celebrate is what we'll get into tomorrow, is not just that he was killed, but that he rose again. So tomorrow, let's answer the question, where is the body? I look forward to talking to you then.